So the TY students as well as MSc students are having till 10. Of course, I told them to finish it by 9:45 or so, but maybe they will be joining.
By the time we, I think, introduce, they will join.
Okay, no problem. Sir, shall we start? Mahesh,
Yes,
sir?
yes, yes.
You can welcome, madam.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of Hindi Vidya Prachar Samiti's Ram Niranjan Jhunjhunwala College, Department of Physics, I, Ratna Jadhav, welcome you all to this session of mini workshop on Excel. I'm sure you all will enjoy it. It is this workshop we have organized under our DBT STAR activity. May I now request Dr. Kiran Koivankar, sir, to welcome and introduce our guest, today's guest speaker, Dr. Mahesh Shetty from Wilson College.
Not doctor.
Good morning and welcome, Professor Mahesh Shetty, to this session. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, it's my great pleasure to introduce our friend and colleague, Professor Mahesh Shetty. He is in Wilson College. He has almost 23 years of experience, teaching experience. He did his BSc and MSc from Ruparel College in 1995. He is very active in science popularization. He conducts a lot of courses for astronomy, and he arranges stargazing camps, and many of our students have also taken advantage of that. So he's faculty with Center for Extraterrestrial Studies for certificate course in astronomy and astrophysics, and certificate course in ancient Indian art, crafts, and science. As I said, he is very active in science popularization. So he is very active with IIPT, Indian Association of Physics Teachers. He is at present secretary of Mumbai Sub-Regional Center. Then he has also worked with HBCSC and for training Indian team at International Astronomy Olympiads, and he has been a team leader to 3 different competitions. One at Stockholm in 2003, then at Beijing in 2005, and at Kyiv, Ukraine in 2007. So you see, he's very busy uh, popularizing science, and many students have taken advantage of his enthusiasm and they have got interested in physics. So he has given quite a few public lectures in astronomy, space science, history of science, and astronomy related uh, topics. Let's hear. He also gives lectures on use of Excel or computational physics and how one can use Excel to understand problems in physics. So today, let's listen to that lecture. We are eager to hear to you, Professor Shetty. So I welcome you again and request you to start your presentation.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. First, let me thank Jhunjhunwala College and Physics Department for giving me this opportunity to interact with you all. So thank you very much. I will first, I will have this in 2 parts. I'll first have a small presentation on what are we going to do and why are we doing it. And in immediately after that, I will show how Excel can be directly used, okay, for simulation purpose. So a small basic introduction of what is simulation, why we do simulation, and immediately we'll start with some simple things that we are doing at BSc level. And simultaneously, if you have questions, you can ask. Only thing is, when I'm sharing the screen, probably I may not be able to know. So you may either raise hand, or I request one of the teachers, if you can tell me whether there is any particular question in the chat. Okay, so okay, let me share the presentation first. I will just keep my video off right now, and okay, now I have forgotten where to share and how to share. Yeah, sorry. Is this visible?
Yes, sir.
So we are talking about simulations. So first, what is simulation? Okay, and at any point of time, if the sound is not coming or something, just let me know, or you can also message me on WhatsApp. So that is what a request I'm making. Okay, in case I lose connection or something like that.
Yes,
Right?
sure, sir.
Yeah. So what is simulation? So simulation is numerically calculating the sequence of physical parameters in the given situation, taking into account given initial conditions. So in physics, what we do, see, the power of physics is to be able to do prediction. Okay, you are given initial conditions. Initial, in mechanics, for example, it's initial position, initial momentum of a particle. Okay, in thermodynamics, you will give various initial parameters. Okay, like temperature, pressure, density, and so on. Okay, and we do the calculation, we apply the formulae, and what we do is we predict after a certain time how these parameters are going to change. Now in simulation, what we do is we numerically calculate the sequence of these physical parameters. Okay, so we say that after, say, maybe t equal to 1, t equal to 2, t equal to 3. Now this t could be in any units. It could be in seconds, it could be in microseconds, it could be in days, it could be in years, it could be anything. Depending on the given particular scale of the problem, one can decide the time, one can decide the numbers, and we have to give the solution. Most important thing here is numerically calculating sequence is very important. Typically, when we solve physics equations, physics problems in the classroom, okay, we use a method called analytical method. So if there is a differential equation, we solve analytical differential equation. What do? We have got a differential equation. We write another function. We don't bother about numbers. We write another function. But when it comes to physical problem, okay, ultimately the meaning is given to that final result only when you substitute the numbers. Okay, so why not start with the number itself and start calculating what will happen at every interval of, or at given interval of time. Now, when computers were not available, this was a tedious job. But now when computers are available, computers can be effectively used to do these things. So numeric simulation is basically numerically calculating the sequence of physical parameters. Now, numerical solutions to various differential equations are part of simulation. So when you are solving differential equation, you need not solve all analytical way, because solving differential equation, remember, involves integrals. Some kind of integrals we need to do. Either you are doing those integrals, or you are remembering particular integral from those standard integral tables and you are substituting, or sometimes you are only remembering the pattern that the solution of this kind of differential equation is this kind of, sometimes you have solved, or sometimes some mathematicians have solved and you are using it. So instead of doing those analytical things, because in general integrations are difficult, one can use numerical solution, okay, and do the integration. Because whenever we are talking about integration of a function, it is not necessary that every function can be integrated to give you another function. Not necessarily. Integration is area under the curve. We'll see that. Okay, and therefore numerical solutions becomes very useful. Third thing is it need not have visual effect. So simulation is not animation. Okay, that is very important to realize, that simulation involves numerical solution. Sometimes for your understanding, you may convert that simulation into graphical form. Okay, but simulation is not an animation. So there is a difference between the two. Okay, for example, when BRC scientists claim that they have simulated nuclear fusion bomb, you don't expect audio visual effect on computer. Okay, you will expect the numbers. You will talk about the numbers, that how much of heat got generated, how much pressure got created, and all those kind of things you are interested in. So you are going to look at numbers. Okay, but even with all this, okay, because the all information is put in these numbers, it becomes very interesting when you start interpreting those numbers. Let's move ahead. So first, why are we going to do simulation? What is the use of simulation, and why? I mean, it's not part of syllabus anywhere, unfortunately, at undergraduate level. Okay, mainly because computers are not easily available. Without people realizing, now this lockdown has made people realize in a very hard way that actually everybody has got a computer in their hands. Okay, because it has microprocessor, it does calculations, it does computation. So even using your mobile has a lot of calculating abilities. Okay, so to demonstrate some concepts which may not be easy to set up in the lab, that could be one of the reasons for simulation. Okay, nuclear physics, for example, I may not have radioactive device, I may not have radioactive material, I may not have the detectors. Okay, but then you are saying that, well, this is how the radioactive material is going to behave, or if I have got chain of radioactive material, this is how their activities are going to be. Okay, one can do the simulation. Okay, weather, entire weather you can't generate inside the lab, but one can do the simulation for weather pattern. Okay, simple things like resistor capacitors one can easily employ in the lab, and you can work with that. But suppose you are interested in mass spring kind of a system, and and you want some exotic numbers in that. Okay, it may not be possible to build that kind of material with the kind of constraint, budgetary constraints, and so on. Okay, so simulations help you to first understand certain concepts. Okay, then change of parameter may not be easy in the lab. Okay, for example, even if you consider a bar pendulum experiment, typically in your lab, if you look at a bar pendulum, it has got certain fixed holes. I want to fix it at any other point. It is not possible because there is no hole over there. So you may have to design new kind of a bar parameter, bar pendulum, where you may adjust it wherever you like, or you can do simulation and see what kind of results come. And after doing simulation, maybe you can design a better kind of pendulum. Okay, trial and error with actual setup may be difficult. So sometimes you want to design something newly. Okay, and in order to design newly, you have to do trial and error. Okay, and that might be difficult. So what you can do is you can do the calculation first, and you can simulate it, because simulations using computer is going to help you vary the parameters randomly the way you like. When I say randomly, it is not completely randomly, but arbitrarily you can vary the parameter, and it can help to choose parameters in designing experiment. I'll give you an example, a very good example of in first year you might have learned about Helmholtz coil. Okay, so that why they say that the distance between two coils should be equal to r. Okay, r is the radius of each coil. There are two identical coils separated by distance r. So why not 2r? Why not 1.5r? Why equal to r? Okay, one of the reason could be, well, it looks compact, but what guarantee is that it will give almost uniform magnetic field at the center, okay, or throughout the axis. So we can quickly see knowing the result for single coil. Okay, and I will show you that. And sometimes also to visualize analytical solutions. So analytical solutions, when you sometimes see visually, okay, it can be very impactful depending on also your personal way of learning. Okay, some people learn better by looking at graphs, some people learn better by looking at numbers. So it is all up to you. And all these simulations, let me tell you myself, all these simulations I learned first when I had to talk about that coupled there used to be a topic called coupled harmonic oscillator, and looking at the equation, it was very difficult for me to analyze those equations. Okay, I said, let me do the simulation. And long back, then there was basic programming language, and said, okay, let me write a code in basic language and see what actually happens. And then I could also create some visual effect over there. And that was something beautiful for me. Okay, and this some 20 years back, and it was something beautiful for me. And that triggered my liking in simulations. And since then, okay, any topic that I want to teach, I want to understand myself better, okay, I say, okay, let me simulate and do it. Now if I can do it after my graduation, during your study year itself, you can surely start working on it, and you surely will have much better understanding, okay, by the time you graduate. So these are the reasons. And now third question, we talked about what is simulation, why simulation, now why Excel. Okay, you may say, why are you talking about Excel? Okay, nobody uses Excel. No, it's not that nobody uses Excel, at least I use, but and there are many seriously working people also use. You may say there are other languages, like there are Mathematica is there MATLAB is there, those kind of softwares are there. Now everybody is learning Python. So yes, all these are programming tools are very useful, and some of these well developed softwares are really very powerful. But Excel is also powerful. It is already a well developed package, and it is available to most people having PC. Okay, so Excel is available. If on mobile phone, okay, Google Sheets are available. If you're using Android phone, for example, Google Sheet is available. And Google Meet that we can do in Excel, you can do also in Google Sheet. Though not all, some of the things, but I will mention which things you are not able to, you may not be easily able to do in Google Sheet. Okay, there is data analysis pack in Excel that is not available in Google Sheet, but Google may be coming with different kind of things. I have not explored Google Sheets much, but whatever I'll be doing now surely can also be done with Google Sheets. I have done that part. Okay, so I know it can be done. In school basic, introduction to Excel is generally done. Okay, generally most of the schools by now, when you were in school, some introduction to computer was there. Depending on the school, depending on the facilities available, it could be probably more of book and less in computer lab. Some people might have got more exposure in computer lab also. Okay, but some introduction to Excel must have been done. So learning basics of Excel is not going to be very difficult. Once you start using it, okay, you will remember many things. I mean, our brain is that way very interesting device. Okay, that once you start doing it, you surely remember lot many things that you have already done. And once these basic techniques of simulations is learned, using it quickly for any programming language you learn becomes very easy. Let me give you again my example that many of these things I already done in Excel. And recently one of our student was teaching us Python. Okay, I mean, I just asked him, okay, why now that everybody is online, so maybe online group, small group we can form, and you can teach all of us Python. So he agreed, and 4 sessions he conducted weekly once. And as he was teaching, okay, parallelly I used to start thinking about how this whatever I have done in Excel, how I can do it in Python. Because every time you learn a command, every time you learn new instruction, okay, you automatically start thinking, because you already done similar kind of thing in with whatever was available to you. Okay, so when new tool comes, you start immediately thinking about how I can use this tool. So this training of mind is very important when you are doing simulation, and that is also a reason. And you should not remain handicapped that Python kab karunga, my exams will get over, then I don't know where to do course. Whether on Coursera is it good enough, but I don't know whether I'll be able to learn myself. All these things. Okay, So whatever is available with you, Excel, Google Sheets, start doing things. That is most important. Okay. Doing things is more important than, especially during learning, planning how to learn. Okay. Start learning. That's the most important thing. Okay. Now come back to Excel. Basic terminologies in Excel is Excel is a spreadsheet program. I will come to this slide after I explain on Excel sheet itself. Okay, so I'll just stop sharing this and I'll share Excel sheet itself. Any questions up to this point? Am I clearly audible, or is the screen was clearly visible?
Students, do you have any problem? Okay. Are you able to hear properly?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, is this screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So this is Excel spreadsheet. Okay, and I'm clicking on any cell. You see these are all boxes. They are called cell. Now each cell is an address, and the address is simple. It has got A, B, C, D columns at the top, and 1, 2, 3, 4 rows are there on the left hand side. Okay, so the column and row together forms an address. So this particular cell has an address. It is in the G column and 9th cell. So G9 is the address of this particular cell. It is also name of this particular cell, and that name appears in this box here. Can you see this box on the left hand side? Okay, so this box over here, the name appears. Fine. Then can you see mouse pointer that I'm moving?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. So now suppose I go here, then it is going to be H4, and you will see that H4 is written over here. So this is the cell. Now what can you have in the cell? So cell can contain data or it can contain formula. Now I want to write a data, so I may write number 25, and now you see that this E6 cell contains 25, and what it contains is shown over here in this top formula bar. It is called formula bar. So if data is there, you will see data written over there. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm writing in this G5 cell 5, and I'm writing here a formula in G6 cell that it is G5 square. Now, when I look at the spreadsheet, I see in E6 also there is 25, in G6 also there is 25. So just by looking at it, I will not know whether it contains data 25 or it contains some formula whose result is 25. Okay, when I click on the cell in this formula bar, I will know what it is actually. So when I click here, I can see that 25 is actually written over here. So this is data 25. When I click here, you see there is a formula written over here equal to G5 caret 2. Okay, it is a formula, and this tells me that in G6 cell, whatever I am 25 I am seeing is not the data that I have put, but it is the result of the formula that I have put. Now, whenever you write formula, something say y is equal to some f of x, okay, that x is a variable. Okay, and you can change the value of x, and accordingly the value of y will also change, f of x will change. So whenever you are writing formula, basically you are writing f of x here in that particular cell, and the variables you can take from different cells. So say for example, when I'm writing here in G6 cell equal to G5 square, this is a formula of squaring equal to x square kind of a formula, f of x equal to x square, where x I have taken from G5 cell. Okay, so if I change the value of G5, automatically the value of this function will change. Okay, it has become 36. If I make it 100, it will become 10,000. If I make it 0.1, this output will become automatically 0.01, because it will calculate automatically square of this number. Now this is one powerful thing. Okay, I just change the value of one variable, automatically all my results are going to change. Okay, now let us do a very simple thing based on this. So what I've said, Excel is basically a spreadsheet. It contains cells. Each cell can be identified by its address. Okay, so address is given by column and row. So E6, F5, C2, A1, and so on. And that you can see here on the left hand side, name box. What is there in that particular cell is given here in the formula bar. Okay, and the cell can contain data, cell can contain formula. Okay, every formula must start with equal to. Okay, so whenever I want to write a formula, I first have to write equal to and then write the formula. In the formula, variables are going to be some other cell values, some other cell addresses. Okay, so say for example, I want to write equal to sign of something. The sign function is there, and sign of say A4. Okay, now there is nothing in A4, so it will take that value as 0 and will calculate sign of A4 as 0. But suppose I write this sign value as say 1.57, which is approximately pi by 2. Okay, then it is going to give me 1 value here. So sign of pi by 2 is 1. Okay, so depending on what value of what is the value of A I am writing, accordingly value of this sign function is going to change. Okay, now keeping this in mind, let us see, we have to jump on to now how simulations can be built up. Okay, so this is basic introduction of Excel, that you can write data in the cell, you can write formula in the cell. Okay, and you can also plot this. So let me just take a simple and one more advantage of that. Okay, so suppose I am writing in first cell 0, then I can write equal to A1 plus say 0.1. Fine. Now I got 0.1 over here. Now I want 0.2, 0.3. I want to carry the same formula further. I don't have to write formula everywhere. What I do is I just drag this formula, but while dragging, see where the mouse pointer is. It has to come to the right hand side bottom cross, so that the color of the cross changes from white to black, and then I drag it. And automatically all the numbers get generated, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, and so on. Let me repeat one more thing. I have written formula here, A1 plus 0.1. Okay, and A1 contains 0. So naturally, if I start with 1, it will give me all value 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and so on. But most importantly, when I have dragged the formula, you see everywhere in all these cells, there is a formula now. I had written original formula in A2 as A1 plus 0.1. Excel is intelligent enough to understand that what I want is the earlier cell plus 0.1. So if I go to A12, it will automatically give the formula not A1 plus 0.1, but A11 plus 0.1. If I go to A17, the formula becomes A16 plus 0.1. If I go to A19, it is A18 plus 0.1. So Excel, when it drags the formula, it intelligently understands that with relative to this cell, whatever was this earlier cell, okay, I have to use that. So if one cell previous I'm going to use, okay, the same thing it is going to do down. I can also the drag formula on right hand side and see everywhere what is happening. Now A1 plus 0.1, when I have dragged it to B column, it has become B1 plus 0.1. When I drag to C column, it has become C1 plus 0.1. Okay, so the relative reference of that variable, it is keeping same. That I wanted the previous cell, and the previous cell I'm counting as that the upper cell. The upper cell plus 0.1. So if I put this formula anywhere, it is going to take the upper cell plus 0.1. So here, say for example, in F1, if I write 500, then automatically it will calculate 500.1. Okay, so this relative reference is an important concept in Excel. This is very useful but at the same time, sometimes it will do things that you don't want. Okay, and we have to take care of that. I will come to those examples. Okay, so this was about what all Excel can do. Basic terminologies Excel we are talking about. Okay, so now let me come back to the presentation and let me share that slide. So Excel is a spreadsheet program. Every box is a cell. Each cell can contain either data or formula. Data can be number, text, date, time, it can be anything. Most of the time we are going to deal with numbers. In the formula, we can refer to the cells as variables. When the value of cell changes, the value of dependent cell means we have independent variable, dependent variable. So in whichever cell I have written a formula, that becomes a dependent cell. So the value of dependent cell will change automatically. We have seen that. Okay, when I change the original number to 5, the square cell becomes automatically 25. If I make it 6, it becomes 36. Okay, so automatically the value changes. So Excel calculates whenever I make any change in any formula, Excel calculates the entire spreadsheet. Excel plots are not graphs, and that is they are not curve fitting plots. And there is something called trend line, which is for curve fitting. Say for example, if I in your journal you have got certain data points and you want to plot a graph of y versus x. Now those data points you can also write in Excel, and Excel will plot those points. Now just by joining those the way you like is not curve fitting. Curve fitting is you may pass a line. Suppose it is quite possible that those points are in such a way that a straight line graph should pass through it, but actual good straight line graph may not pass through any of those single points. The points are equally distributed on both sides, but not exactly passing through any of the points. That is called curve fitting. Excel doesn't do curve fitting. In Excel, there is additional thing called trend line that does a curve fitting. Okay, but we'll not bother right now because that is part of data analysis, and we are not right now dealing with data analysis. We are dealing with simulations. Okay, so let me come back to Excel. Yeah. So here, let me show you that plotting part. Okay, so let me first remove all this. Now I told you that I can drag the formula, but instead of dragging formula, Microsoft Excel also gives you that option of copy pasting. Okay, so you can copy the formula and paste the formula. So say, let us suppose I'm writing here 0 and I'm adding it, I'm increasing it with 0.1. So A1 plus 0.1. Okay, and I'm copying that, and suppose I want to copy it for next 300 cell. More precise, I go up to this point. Okay, so I go up to 31.3, which I know is approximately 10 pi. Okay, so I have written these values. Now suppose I want to calculate sine. So on the next column I am calculating sine of A1, and I only have to copy and paste this in all the cells down here. Automatically sine values for all these will be calculated. So I'm just pasting the formula. I copied that formula. I'm pasting the formula. How do you do copy paste? So all Microsoft Office has same shortcut keys: Control C, Control V. Control C for copying. So when you copy a particular cell, okay, it shows a dotted line around that cell, and then you can paste that. Okay, and you want to remove that selection, you just press escape key on the keyboard. So the selection is removed. Now it has calculated sine values for all these angles, and whenever you have used sine function, it is considered that this argument is going to be in radians. Okay, so all these are in radians. Now I can plot this. Okay, what I can do is I can select entire thing, and in insert, scatter, and I can use either points or a line, and it will show me a nice sine wave. I'm repeating, it is not a graph. I have not plotted a graph. I have generated sine function here, the numbers, and I have just plotted those numbers. Okay, so you get nice sine wave here. I can change it now. See, advantage of Excel. I can change this function from sine to cos. Okay, and copy paste everywhere. And you see now it has become a cos function because it has started from 1 and now it is ending also at 1. You see, original sine wave, it was starting at 0 and it was ending almost at 0. Okay, I had almost taken 10 pi. So 5 complete oscillations it was supposed to do. Okay, so the point here is sine function, cosine function, you can directly do calculation. Suppose I am interested in sine A1 plus say cos or 2 into cos A1. So sine x plus 2 cos x. This is what I want to add and I want to plot that function. I copy paste it and I get this. And what you observe is it is a sinusoidal curve only. Okay, and it is also completing 5 oscillations, so it is the same frequency. It's just that there is a change in the phase and the total amplitude has become different. So whenever you add sinusoidal functions of the same frequencies, you get sinusoidal function only. Okay, only the phase change takes place. See, this is also learning in physics. Okay, that whenever you are handling sine functions, okay, I have sine omega t plus sine 2 omega t, that is going to sine omega t plus say 2 sine omega t. Okay, the frequency is same and therefore I'm going to get a sinusoidal wave only. Okay, that just that its starting value could be different, and that means basically the phase has changed. Okay, I can then accordingly calculate whatever I write. Now I want to suppose calculate square root function, square root of this. So I write sqrt root of A1. Okay, and I copy paste the same thing everywhere. So you see it is a square root function. Okay, so y is the root of x. It is this. I want x square. I can write A1 square. And I copy paste. And this is half parabola. I started with 0 and my last value was 31. Okay, so I may start with say minus 16.5 and see what has happened. Okay, automatically it will do the calculation from minus 16.5 to the last value of 14.8. Let me take minus 16. Okay, and you see that it gives me automatically everything has changed. I just changed one parameter here. I don't have to copy paste because all the formula is already written and this formula is already a square formula, so it is all automatically going to do the calculation. Okay, once this same formula is written, only by changing one parameter I can change multiple things here. Now if I want to change instead of 0.1 0.2, I will have to apply that formula everywhere. But what I can do is I can use some other shortcuts and decide where this 0.1 I can write, and I can only change that parameter and I can rescale everything. But before I talk into this such kind of rescaling and other things, let me come to simulation part. Okay, so after some basic introduction of Excel, that how one can write formula, how one can plot those values. Repeat, it is not a, that way curve fitting. Okay, plot these values. Let us see how simulation can be done and how simulation equations first can be written. Okay, so I come back to the presentation. So numerical calculations, when you want to do integration, is nothing but area under the curve. So you may calculate the function f of x for various values of x, and you can multiply each value with this interval, and you can go on adding all these things and you can get an integration. Similarly, differentiation, if I want to do, I can calculate the functions at different values, and then I can find out what is the slope between the nearest two values. So y2 minus y1 upon x2 minus x1 will give me the derivative at that particular point. Okay, both these things become very important when we solve the equations. So let's come to first simulation. Okay, so first order differential equations are useful in radioactivity, charging, discharging of capacitor, growth and decay of current in inductor, Newton's law of cooling, a model of atmospheric pressure. Okay, so let us see how do we simulate first order differential equation. Okay, so let us start with the famous equation that everybody has learned many times. Okay, that in radioactivity we have dN by dt equal to minus lambda n. Now this is dN by dt, that's a derivative, and here we are, what is dt? It is infinitesimal change, limit delta t tending to 0. But here we cannot have limit delta t tending to 0. We want to have some discrete difference, some finite difference. And because we are going to bother about finite difference, this differential equation we need to convert back into difference equation. Okay, so this difference equation, instead of dn, we'll write delta n, and will be equal to minus lambda n dt. So now see how we are breaking it up. dn is equal to minus lambda n dt. What is dn? The later value minus initial value, the difference in n. So n2 minus n1 is equal to lambda original value of n, so n1 into dt. Okay, this has to be minus sign. There has to be minus sign over here. Okay, and yeah, so add forgotten that minus sign. Let me quickly make that change. Okay, so it is minus lambda n1 dt, and therefore I can write the new value of n is the old value of n minus lambda old value of n into dt. This we can simulate. So iterate this in loop for small increments in time. Okay, so for radioactive series we can do the same thing, but let us do this first. Okay, dN by dt is minus lambda n. We want to solve this equation. So let us do it using Excel. So I shift to Excel. I'm right now not interested in this graph. Let us see what I'm going to do. Generally, it is my practice. Okay, when I want to do simulation for a long series, t equal to 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on, I start at row 5. Okay, first 4 rows I keep to write some description, write some parameter values, and so on. So say in the 4th row I'm writing what I'm plotting. So this is time, this is n that I want to calculate. Okay, now here I'm going to write what is my delta t or dt. So I'm going to take dt as say 0.1. My time starts at 0. Okay, and initial value of n I want to maybe take as say 10,000. Okay, and here I have to write that lambda value. So lambda value I will have to choose something. Okay, so lambda value I can choose maybe say 1. Okay, now see what happens. When I'm going to do simulation, I should have some guess of what value I'm choosing. So I know that half-life is log 2 divided by lambda, 0.693 divided by lambda. Okay, and therefore half life here will become 0.7. So which means the number of n will come down within just 7 iterations. Okay, and to have a better simulation, remember delta t should be small, very, very small. Now in physics, you should always ask a question when somebody says that this quantity is small. how small is small? That is the most important question you should ask. Somebody has some quantity is large, you should ask how large is large. Okay, so here when I say delta t should be small, I'll say small means I will take say 100 times smaller than maybe half-life. Okay, now half-life is approximately 0.6, 0.7 divided by 1. Okay, 0.7 divided by lambda. So I may take it as approximately 1 here. Okay, so I will take dt as say 100 times smaller, say 0.01. Okay, now I have decided what is going to be my incremental step and what is going to be my lambda value, what is going to be the initial value. Okay, now what I will generate the time series. So in A6 I'll write A5 plus, instead of writing 0.01, I'm writing a special formula. Pay attention to this. I'm writing $A $2. Sorry, $A $2. Okay, I will explain why I've written $A $2 instead of just writing A2. When I drag it to the next cell, any question? Anybody has any question? Any problem there? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. Yeah. So see what has happened. I have written A5 plus, instead of 0.01, I have written A2, but instead of writing A2, I have written $A $2 here in my formula bar. Okay, because when I copy this formula down, you see in A7, A5 had become A6, but that A2 remained A2 because I have locked that cell. So when you want to lock the cell, you write dollar there. So I have $A and $2, which means the cell, the row and column, both I have locked. So I want only this number to be added down. Okay, and I drag it down. And how many cells I want to drag? So maybe say I want to copy this formula in next 200 cells. So I may go to 205. I've already gone across that, and I'll paste. Okay. Most importantly, I want to write a formula here. So what was the formula here? Remember, N2 is equal to N1 minus lambda N1 dt. So N2, this is my new value in B6, equal to N1, that is my earlier value. So I'm just clicking here. So it is B5 minus lambda. Lambda is in B2, but I want to keep that value fixed. I don't want to drag that cell. So $B $2 minus lambda N1. So N1 is again B5 into dt. dt is this $A $2. $A $2. See what I have written this formula. I have written B5 minus $B $2 into B5 into $A $2. What is B5? N1 value. What is $B $2? Lambda value. What is B5? Again N1 value. And what is $A $2? It is my delta t or dt value. So N2 is equal to N1 minus lambda N1 dt. This is what I have written. Now I will paste this formula everywhere up to t equal to 2, and now I can plot this function. So what I can do is I have selected all cells and insert, scatter this, and you see the graph of radioactive decay. This is the simplest simulation, right? What you have done? Nowhere you have written the formula e raised to minus lambda t. You don't see that formula anywhere. You have, without writing that formula, you are getting this exponentially, the logarithmic falling graph. Why are you getting that graph? Because you have simulated this differential equation. Okay, and you can change the value, you can change the increment of time. Instead of 0.01, if I take 0.02, okay, instead of up to 2, I will go up to 4. I'm not changing lambda value. So you see, up to 4, it has gone further down. Okay, I can change the incremental steps. I can make it 0.05. It has gone up to 10, and you see by the time it reaches 5, it has almost become 0. And that's the meaning of 5 times half-life. The value goes less than 1%. Okay, in charging discharging of capacitor, you are using the same thing here over here. 5 times tau, you say capacitor is fully discharged. Why? You can look at the graph and see what happens. Okay, after 5 times, I have taken lambda here 1, equivalent to half-life of 0.7. Okay, so approximately 5 times the value has gone down. Okay, to near 0. Fine. So this is simplest of the thing that you can do. Now I want ABC series. So if I want ABC series, what I will do, let me go back to the presentation and show you what to write there. Some of the things I will, I mean, as far as possible, I would like to do everything in front of you. But if time constraint is there, some of the things I will show you whatever is already done. I can explain you what was done there, where. So now this is another thing that you learned in first year. Consider series A disintegrating into B disintegrating into C. So how are you going to write the equation? Na is equal to Na minus lambda A Na dt. And Nb is going to be Nb plus lambda A Na dt minus lambda B Nb dt. See what is happening? That Nb is getting generated by the same amount as A is getting disintegrated. So there is a plus value here. And additionally, B is also getting disintegrated. So I'm writing that number over here. Okay. And NC is going to be NC plus lambda B NB dt, because whatever B is disintegrating, okay, with that amount C is getting created. Now here it should be ideally Na2 equal to Na1 minus lambda Na1 dt, which means the new value of Na is old value of Na minus lambda Na dt. Okay, this is not an equation, remember. Like in programming, this is an assignment that you are doing. The new value of Na is assigned with this particular function, okay, or this particular formula. And that is what you can do. And let me show you that. So at this point, I will just quickly use so that something which is already done. Let me just select the correct file. Okay, I will have to. Okay, here, let me share this. Yeah, can you see this?
No, sir.
I think, yeah, my screen sharing is paused. Let me again see. Okay, it says screen sharing is paused. I don't know whether it is because of network, but let me change my network. Can I let me see why. No, it keeps giving me saying that your screen sharing is paused. So let me see whether I can share at least
I will make you
presentation.
host for. I will make you host and then try.
What I will do is I will share the presentation. Let me check first. Is presentation visible, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Now let me again share the Excel sheet then.
I have made you host for some time. So
Thank you, sir. No, it is still showing. So I think there is small issue with the Excel, probably to Excel which is not handling. Let me. I closed one Excel file. Probably too many files were open. Let me.
or you can share the desktop and then open.
Yeah, that.
But maybe it is buffering. It is showing buffering. So
No, here it says that screen sharing is paused, but it is showing only for that particular screen. Let me see why it is doing that. In a minute, I should be able to figure out what is happening.
Wi-Fi problem, maybe.
No, I also changed the network. Now this is better network, but it's still no, because it is. Let me see what is. Okay, let me come back to. I'll just give one more try and then I will. Okay, is this fine?
Yes, sir. We can see.
Okay, yeah. So here what I've done is I've taken time in a larger units of 1000, 2000 because I was here dealing with uranium 238, 234, 230, 226. This is a series. Okay, and A is disintegrating into B, B is disintegrating into C, C is disintegrating, and you see what is happening is these are the typical curves that you see. A falls, so this is uranium 234 that is going to fall, and thorium 230 rises and then again it falls, and radium 226 you observe radium 226 actually has very small half-life. Okay, and just 1600 years. And so what happens is effectively it doesn't get generated in large quantity at all. And finally, the final product is lead 206. You see the lead 206 starts rising. Okay, so you can vary the parameters of the half-life and accordingly the things are going to change. Now, let me put arbitrary half-life parameter like this is 250,000 years instead of 250,000 years. Let me just increase one extra zero. Okay, I'm just arbitrarily adding this value and see what is happening. That slowly this uranium 234 is falling very slowly because half-life is very, very large. Okay, and therefore all other things are not even getting created. Now let me remove that and let me increase the half-life of instead of 80,000 I may make it 8 lakh. Now see what has happened. This thorium is having very small half-life. Suppose this is not a real case now. Okay, then what will happen? The uranium 234 is disintegrating and thorium has risen and its level has really increased now here. Okay, as compared to this. Okay, because its half-life is very, very large, which means it has become slowly decaying, and so it starts getting accumulated more and more. And because of that, now the lead is slowly going to increase, but radium 226 is still almost zero because what is happening is it has a very small half-life, so it just gets created and gets disintegrated. Okay, so now these figures really become useful when you are studying, say for example, geology. Take a rock, you find out the activities of different material. From that you can find out that because every different material there, see all these are alpha emitters, And whenever alpha emitters are there, alpha emitters are all what you know as they are what we call monochromatic, which means all particular source gives you alpha particle with single typical energy. Okay, so knowing alpha particle energy, it is possible to find out which element is disintegrating that, because now people have mapped that. Okay, so you can find out what is the activity of this, and knowing the activity, how much amount must be there in the rock. And when you make a comparison between different the amounts, okay, and theoretically what should be the I mean, suppose everything has started with uranium-238, what should be the comparison? So any deviation from this, that is because of originally there was some different amount of uranium, and 235, uranium-238 could be present. So studies of various other branches has become possible because we are able to do simulations like this. And why it becomes very useful for you to do simulations like this? Because it really gives you some extra dimension way of thinking. Otherwise, when you only look at all equations, yes, there are some people who are beautifully, who can make out the beauty in those equations which are written in analytical form, but sometimes the beauty is in details, sometimes the beauty is in numbers. Okay, and when you start dealing with numbers, these patterns is something that you can grasp sometimes better. Some of you can grasp these kind of patterns better, and then looking at any other kind of graph, you can develop that ability. So the same difference equation formula we had used. I'll go to now more interesting simulation, which is the harmonic oscillator kind of simulation. Okay, so I will share that presentation. My presentation next part. So suppose you want to do simple harmonic oscillator. Okay, it's equation of simple harmonic oscillator is F is equal to minus kx minus bv, where k is spring constant, x is the displacement, b is the damping constant we call, and v is the velocity. So there can be additional parameter of velocity also. Now, how do we numerically simulate this? Analytically, we know how we can write this. Numerically, how do we do this? So first, you will have to calculate numbers. So acceleration is force upon mass. Velocity is integration of acceleration, and this is nothing but numerical integration. V2 is equal to V1 plus alpha into acceleration into dt. Okay, and then position is integral of velocity. So original position plus velocity into dt. Fine. These three things you are going to write, and you will do the simulation. Okay, so simple harmonic oscillator simulation, let us do it ourselves here. So let me again share Excel. Let me open a new sheet. I will share that. Okay, can you see the Excel sheet?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I will start again with time and acceleration, velocity, displacement. Okay, and I'll start with 0 time. So what is my dt value? So dt value, I have to decide from my parameter. So what is my k value and what is the b value? Now k value, let me take for simplicity, k value let me take as 1. Okay, and initially I don't want damping, so I'm keeping damping parameter 0. Now if k value is 1, remember omega was root of k by m, and I'm taking mass as 1. Okay, nowhere I'm writing mass because I'm only dealing with acceleration, velocity, and displacement. Okay, I'm taking basically mass as 1. So omega becomes effectively 1. If omega becomes 1, time period is 2 pi by omega, so it is approximately 6 units. Okay, so if one oscillation will take approximately 2 pi or 6.3. Okay, I want dt to be much smaller than that. So let me take 0.01. Okay, which means I will need, in order to reach 6.3, I will have to simulate it 630 times at least. Okay, so that I will have one oscillation. Now I don't mind doing it that way. Okay, I can make this 0.02 also, and then when I do it for 630 times, it will give me basically 2 oscillations, because I have incremented my time by 0.02. So let me do that. Okay, so I'm going to write the formula equal to A phi plus $A$2. Remember, it is my locking that particular cell. Okay, and now I'm going to paste this formula for not 630 but 1260. So 4 oscillations I expect. And when there is Excel, you are not bothered about doing large number of calculations. Excel is anyway doing it. Okay, so 1260 I can go. Fine. So my last value is something like 25.4, which is approximately 8 pi. Fine. Now, most important is writing my acceleration, velocity, and displacement. So what is the initial displacement? Let us suppose it is an oscillator, and I initially displace it by magnitude of 1. Initial velocity is 0. So I have stretched the oscillator and I'm going to release it. Okay. I'm going to calculate the acceleration. At this point, I don't know acceleration. My next iteration acceleration will depend on my earlier position and velocity. So what is my acceleration formula? Is equal to minus kx. So minus, in place of k, I am writing $B$2. Remember that k value is written here, into x. X is my earlier value of x, so d phi, minus velocity, b into v, so $C$2. Though it is 0, I'm still writing it $C$2 into my earlier velocity, so it is c phi. So this is my acceleration. This is the acceleration. Okay. What I've written, acceleration is minus $B$2, which is for $B$2 is for k. D phi is for x minus kx minus vv. V is given at $C$2. Okay, and velocity is given in the column C. So the earlier column c phi. Now I will calculate velocity based on acceleration. So what is my new velocity? New velocity is old velocity. So it is c phi plus acceleration, that is B6. Now I've just calculated acceleration, multiplied by delta t, $A$T. $A$2. Okay. And I see what I will go to do is I will okay, and I can copy the same formula on the right hand side, because it is going to give me, see, D6 is D phi, the relative cells, D phi, okay, plus C6. C6 is my earlier cell, that is new position is old position plus velocity into delta t. Okay, so I mean, here that relative position thing is helping me, but I have to keep track that only this is happening only because I'm writing acceleration, velocity, and displacement in this order. Okay, now what I have to do is I just have to drag these things till the last point. And remember, my last point was in the row 1200 something, 1260 or so. Calculations are done. Let me plot. So when I'm going to plot these functions, insert, I have selected time, acceleration, velocity, displacement, everything, and I get 3 series. I can write what this series is. There are ways of writing that also, and you see that you get a nice sine wave, sinusoidal function. You can actually decide where the name should come. Okay, so select data. The first series I'm going to call acceleration. The second series sorry. Okay, first series I'm going to call acceleration. Second series I'm going to call velocity. And third series I'm going to call this x value. Okay, is this visible to you? Is the graph visible to all of you?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, so it's just that this legend probably is not visible, but let me make it larger in the font. Yeah. Okay, so the colors tell you that green color is acceleration, velocity, and displacement, and you see that nowhere I've written sine formula, but you automatically get the sinusoidal motion. That is because it is solving the numerical differential equation. There are many things that you can learn. For example, this blue curve is acceleration and the green curve is displacement, and you see they are out of phase. Okay, because acceleration is minus kx, and then velocity has 90-degree phase difference between them. So acceleration, velocity, and displacement, they are having this kind of a phase difference. Okay, that is one thing that you do. Now suppose I increase the damping. I make 0 to 0.1. See what has happened. Okay, the amplitude started falling. Why? Because I'm introducing a damping here. Okay, so I may introduce damping with larger amount of damping, and amplitude further falls. So just by changing one parameter, now I can change a lot of things. I can change the spring constant. I can make the spring stiffer. So I can make it 1.5. More oscillations should take place. Okay, in the same amount of time. Fine. So you will see that how many oscillations. Let me make this 0, and probably that will give you some idea. Okay, the amplitude has increased. So now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 oscillations has taken place. And here you see only 4 oscillations are taken place. When I write k as 1, there are only 4 complete oscillations. And when I write k as say 1.5, the stiffer spring, okay, the number of oscillations have increased. Okay, and now of course there is no reason to compare acceleration, velocity, and displacement as far as units are concerned, because each is going to have a different unit and things like that. But at least frequency you can compare, the phase you can compare. Okay, because all of them are sinusoidal. So by increasing k value, you are going to increase the frequency. Decreasing k value, you are going to decrease the frequency. So some of these basic features also you can learn. So you can now in lab it is not possible to have springs of various varying stiffness, but you can introduce these things over here. And if you are interested in finding out, suppose I'm interested in phase plot, I can write a phase plot. What is phase plot? The phase diagram is nothing but momentum versus displacement graph. Okay, so momentum is related to velocity, so I can just choose velocity and displacement together, and I can plot that graph. So let me just plot that graph. So I insert scatter point, and you see this is the phase plot. It is an ellipse for simple harmonic oscillator without damping. I introduced damping 0.1. See, it is spiraled in. You just change one parameter, lots of things are changing automatically. Okay, that is the power of simulation, that you don't have to recalculate everything again and again. Okay, yeah. 2 more simulations, and then we can take questions and difficulties. But you have any questions at this moment, you can ask.
So I have a question. I didn't understand how did you I didn't understand how did you plot for the momentum part, means the phase part.
So I did not plot momentum. I plotted velocity and displacement curve together. So what I did was, let me show you that again here. Let me repeat that. I just selected velocity and displacement columns together. I selected from top to bottom, and I said insert, scatter, So these two plots, one is considered as x-axis, one is considered as y-axis, and it plots this. Is it fine? I only selected velocity and displacement. Keeping in mind, momentum is mass into velocity, and mass I'm keeping constant.
So, sir, this is the same, you chose the same option for plot as the previous one, right?
Yes, this is the same plot. This is the same plot. Let me just paste it up. This is the same plot. It is spiraling in because there is damping. If I change this damping parameter to 0, it will become an ellipse. See, I made it 0, it has become an ellipse.
No, I mean, when you're selecting to insert the graph, so you have chosen the same option for plot, means because it's coming as a quadrant, right? It's not coming as an X and Y.
Yes. It is. I am using same option here. What is happening is in the first kind of graph, because my first the first column I choose is generally taken as x-axis, and time axis is increasing continuously. Okay, because time axis is increasing continuously, this gives me function versus time graph. So it is unending graph. Whereas when I'm taking velocity and displacement, what I'm getting is velocity itself is oscillating. Here it is negative, then it will become positive at some other points. So here it is becoming positive. Okay, so naturally the horizontal and vertical points are moving like that. So there is horizontal oscillation, there is also vertical oscillation. Okay, now this brings me to another quick, just because you asked this question, brings me to another quick simulation we can do is Lissajous pattern. Okay, so I can say, for example, take angle theta, okay, and vary from 0 to 360, say equal to a5 plus 1, and I go up to 360. For me, I may go up to 720. Oh, what happened? Sorry. Okay, and what I can do now is I can plot a sine and cosine, but because this is in degrees, I have to first convert it into radians. So radians and E5. And here, suppose I am taking sine of plus some, okay, let me not, I will multiply this with some number, say C1. Okay, and C1 is 1. So I got two sinusoidal waves. What is happening? $C$1 I have to write. $C$1. And what I'm going to do now is I'm plotting two sine waves. I'm not taking first angle at all. Here, I'm plotting this sine wave and this second sine wave and plotting that as a function. Okay. And you see both sine waves, they are in phase together and you get a straight line. This is our Lissajous pattern. Moment I make second frequency half of first, you get figure of 8. Second frequency double of first, you get figure of infinity. Okay, second frequency say 0.3 times something, you get some random curve. Okay, or 0.7 something, you will get something like this. So you see, you can get 0.75, 3:4, and you will get only this half curve. I can increase angle by 2 degrees. to cover more area, and you see the patterns like this. So this is 3:4 frequency pattern, and you get these Lissajous patterns. So by I mean, you can quickly simulate and also see. So whenever new thing you are learning, okay, now you can quickly simulate in Excel and see, well, whatever I learned in the book or whatever I learned in the class, I can simulate and check myself how it looks, whether it is correct, and then you can experiment. You can do trial and error. Okay. Yeah. Any other question? I'll go back to one more quick simulation, and okay. I mean, there are many other things you can do. You can do, for example, Fourier transform using data analysis pack. But you can do three body simulation, the gravitational force simulation. The way you've done only for 2 bodies. So let me show you one of those things. Let me just yeah. Is this new thing visible to you on? Or are you seeing the same
Yes.
old thing?
Yes, sir, we can see.
You see this, this ellipse?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So here what I've done is 2-dimensional simulation I've done. So in 2-dimensional simulation, what you need to do, you need to write parameter along x-axis and along y-axis both. So acceleration, velocity, let me just increase this view. So okay, this I'll take care later. So first you have done acceleration, velocity, x, the same way that a, v, x you calculated, but now you are doing also for y direction acceleration, y direction velocity, y direction motion. And I have given some initial momentum, initial velocity, and initial position to the body. And I have written equation for the acceleration due to gravity. I have not written the value of g and m1, m2, that I have taken as 1, but the relative positions are very important, so I have written those. So D column is basically x position, G column is basically y position. So you see here there is a formula x square plus y square, that D6 square plus G6 square. So that is x square plus y square raised to 3/2. So this is basically r cube. Okay, and when I'm multiplying with D6, it is nothing but it is basically I'm writing the x upon r cube. So that is nothing but acceleration okay, along x direction. It is like r upon r cube. Okay, so vector r upon r cube gives you 1/r square in radial direction, and with minus sign gives you the central force. Okay, so when vector r you break into x component, y component, you basically get x upon x square plus y square raised to 3/2. And similarly, the acceleration for y is going to be y upon x square plus y square raised to 3/2. Okay, so you can write then component wise what is x acceleration and y acceleration, accordingly calculate the velocities and displacement, and then you will be able to do the simulation. So let me go back to the simulation graph here. Okay, and I can change the value of initial position, initial velocities, something like this. Say initial velocity again 0.5. If I give 0.6, what happens? Okay, so now y velocity I have increased, so nature of the graph has changed. Okay, so this is how numerical simulation for gravity also can be done. And I have done also for 3-body kind of a thing. And what you observe is you take any 3 bodies of random masses, the equations become complicated, but it turns out after some time one of the body gets scattered out, and effectively only 2 bodies remain in mutual gravity of each other. Okay, so that becomes an essential thing, that when 2 bodies are interacting, 3 bodies are interacting, eventually one of the body, unless there is a special case, eventually one of the body is lost from the system, and what remains is 2 bodies. So 3-body system is not stable, also can be by trial and error worked out with this, and it's really an interesting game to play with such kind of things. One more thing that I want to show here is this. Sorry. Yeah. Okay, so here, no, not this. Let me just quickly upload that file. In first year BSc, I was talking about, you learn about this Helmholtz coil. Okay, so yeah, what I have done is, you take two coils. If you can see this graph, you take two coils, you write the magnetic field, you calculate the magnetic field, because you know what is the magnetic field along the axis for any coil at whatever distance. So you separate the two coils, and you, from one center of one coil to another center along the axis, you calculate what is the magnetic field. So first you calculate magnetic field due to only one, and you are using the same formula that you derive, that it is basically Z, it is basically R square upon cube root of, not cube root, sorry, R square upon R square plus Z square raised to 3/2. Okay, that is the basic formula. So when you do that for first coil as well as for second coil, and you add the two, this is what you are getting. See what? The separation divided by R I am taken as 1, which means the two coils are separated by radius equal to 1, and you see almost from this coil to this coil, the magnetic field is almost constant. Moment I make this separation 2, you see the drastic change. The magnetic field varies. If I make this separation as, say, half R, 0.5 R, okay, it is constant, but it still increases and decreases. It is not remaining almost constant. That almost constant thing happens only when you have separation of just 1. You see, it is slightly above this 1.4, and it is remaining almost constant for long distance. So the things that you learn, that in Helmholtz coil, the magnetic field is almost constant along the axis. Okay, when you take the separation of R, you can actually simulate. You can simulate here and see. You can then vary the separation and see what happens at different distances, like 1.5 times. Okay, it is I have increased the separation, and the magnetic field decreases and again increases. So it is not remaining constant. If I increase the separation, say instead of this 0.5, okay, then also it increases exactly at the center and then again starts falling. So it is not exactly remaining constant, but at separation equal to 1, it is almost quite constant. Okay, and it is also possible to calculate the difference in this. Suppose I am interested in calculating derivative, okay, of this B. So how do you calculate derivative? It is y2 minus y1 upon x2 minus x1. So if I want to calculate this equal to, say, the next value minus previous value of magnetic field divided by next value, sorry, next value minus previous value along the distance z. Okay, and I calculate this difference y2 minus y1 upon x2 minus x1 for all the distances, and I want to plot this. So what I can do is I can plot z and only select this part, sorry, okay, and suppose I want to plot this. What you observe is there is a point of inflection when the distance is 1. But if distance is, say, I make it smaller, then you see that it is not point of inflection. The derivative of the magnetic field is varying. The derivative of magnetic field is varying. So only at, or even if I make it 1.5, larger than 1, okay, then also it is varying. Derivative of magnetic field is varying. So you see only at 1, at the center, it is point of inflection. and you understand also what is the meaning of point of inflection and things like that. Okay, and that tells you that yes, at r equal to 1, the separation equal to r, you will get good almost constant magnetic field as shown here in the graph. So you can do extra analysis of by doing numerical derivations also. Okay, so I stop at this point, and any questions at this point?
Yes, dear students, if you have any questions, please ask. Or you can also write it in the chat box.
One suggestion I will always have, do these things. You may have noted down few things, or okay, do these things, and once you start doing it, I have just shown you what all things can be done. Okay, I mean there are even I didn't find it saying that okay, I can show you multiple complicated things, and okay, that should inspire you. I have shown simple things that you can quickly do. You should be able to quickly do, and in front of you I have done those things. So I hope that should also give you an inspiration that yes, it can be done this way. Okay, and it is just few steps process, but only thing is first you need to get used to this software, this package, and all these formulas that I talked about are also applicable in Google Sheets. Okay, on mobile, you're using Google Sheets. Google Sheet is free. Okay, you can use it in Google Sheets.
Will you be giving exercises
Hello, sir.
to students? Have you prepared a sheet?
Yes, I will pass on the exercises to you. I'll mail you the exercises.
Yeah, fine.
Sir,
Sir, I think there is a question. Somebody is asking.
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
sir, similar kind of things we have done on JNU plot as well. So somewhere these things are connected with each other.
Any simulating or any plotting things, they are, the physics remains the same. So whether you use it in Excel, whether you use it in MATLAB, the graph will look like the same if the functions are same, if the equations are same. Okay,
So,
now
but,
there are many other tools that I have not used myself.
Yes.
But what I can say is, I mean that kind of confidence I can build in myself is because I know Excel, because I worked with it. If you tell me, okay, now use this package, I think I should be able to learn it in a day or two and confidently use it. Okay, these kind of things happen. You learn one kind of programming language. See, ultimately, your mind starts working that how I can use it for physics that I'm doing. Okay, so when recently I was learning about Python, see, there are people who are using Python for data analysis. There are people who are using it for data science. Okay, but because my brain is always going to work for the physics problem, because I'm talking about those things, I'm thinking in those terms. Okay, whenever anybody will talk about any kind of programming, I will first see whether I can use it for what I want to do. So learning any one programming technique or anything is fine. You may say, okay, I want to learn Python. Very good, go ahead, do that. What I want to say is nothing is outdated when it comes to learning. Okay, there was a time when Mumbai University had a syllabus of basic programming just some 20 years back. Large number of people said that it is out of, nobody uses it. Why are you doing it? See, myself, when I learned, and not very long back, we learned Pascal as a language, and Pascal as a language in our syllabus. And there was no question of Pascal being outdated because it was never in. It was developed for learning good programming skills. So point is, you learn any one technique, you should be able to master any other technique. See, there are large number of people who are working in IT field also, work in scientists also. Okay, new languages are coming all the time. So how are they picking up those things? Because they have mastered one thing. And what can you master? Whatever is in your hands. So if you think Python is right now immediately comfortable to you, it is accessible to you, do it. C is accessible to you, do it. I am sure Excel is accessible to most people. Google Sheets are accessible to most people. Start doing it. This pandemic has taught us one thing. All these years, students had been saying that, there is so much on Google, there is so much on YouTube. Okay, now we know that, but how much you have done, how much you have read, how much you have used. It is ultimately, you start doing it, you learn it. And this exercise, I think, Kiran sir has kept for the purpose of exposure, that yes, this can be done. I think that if that is the purpose, then I think you have to take it from that purpose.
There was somebody else also trying to ask a question.
I wanted to ask that when we are taking differential equations, so this equation that was shown were very easy, means most of the solutions were sinusoidal.
Right.
So how complex can Excel handle? Because if we go for C++, you can use Euler's method and everything to do more complex
Whatever
equations.
you can do in C++, you can do here.
So if suppose it's not,
it's a question of how are you going to write that in the format, in the difference equation format. See, our first exercise, remember, is not using Excel. First exercise was converting our differential equation into difference equation, writing 2 is equal to n1 minus lambda n1 dt. That was the first step. So once you do that, once you learn that step, then anything can be done. There are more efficient ways, surely. Instead of, see, this is a simple method that I talked about, but there are more efficient ways. There are more efficient ways in numerical analysis, and I think this is a good time to talk about that. IIPT Mumbai Sub-Regional Council is planning to have summer school in computational physics at the end of May, where we will be using Excel as well as Python both, and do participate in that. Okay, because when you are, I perfectly understand this question, that if I'm talking about say Bessel function, if I'm talking about those kind of legendary differential equations, okay, can I solve those kind of things? Yes, it is possible to do even those kind of things. Only thing is, we start step by step. So what is the first step? We write difference equation. Then, okay, is it possible that numerical differentiation, other techniques are developed, or numerical integration, other techniques are developed? Yes, there are other techniques developed which will minimize errors. Here, this particular example, even simple techniques work because the oscillatory solution was there. And oscillatory solution, basically that end term, error term, becoming plus minus, effectively cancel out over a long term. So yes, I agree to what you are saying. More complicated things will become slightly more complicated in Excel also, but yes, it is possible to do it.
So,
yes.
When we are using such techniques to calculate the graph or to draw the graph, like whenever we are launching something into the space, these things are taken into consideration for observing the path that we will follow, or that our system will follow. So what kind of problem we are facing when there is a change, as we have observed in the Chandrayaan 2? So what kind of problem we are facing over there, that our observed phenomena is being different from so much accurate graph, what we are expecting?
Okay, see, what happens is there are two things. One is, there are multiple things, but out of that, one thing that let me first talk about is the gravity of the moon itself is, you are talking about the precision of 5-6 decimal places. and the gravity of the moon itself is not perfectly known, because depending on the terrain, depending on the density of the rocks available over there, it is going to change from location to location. So knowing physical parameters with precision is an essential thing to get a precise result. Okay,
Yes.
and that's where the limitations of numerical techniques are going to be there. But even with analytical techniques, ultimately you need to come down to solving, putting some numbers. And moment you're going to put number with some error, the output is going to have some amount of error. We want to avoid error introduced by our method itself. That is also there, the error introduced by our method itself, because delta t, if I take large, then I will not get perfect ninth integration, because I'm going to have introduced small errors. Okay, so people in numerical techniques, people have developed method which will minimize the error introduced by technique. But error introduced by physical parameter has to be handled by the people who are handling those transducers. Okay, so error can come because of two things in numerical simulation. So we should be bothered about error coming because of the simulation technique.
Okay, sir. So, sir, that is what we have experienced in this online mode, that whatever experiments we are doing on the computers, like the error we used to experience in our practicals, that that is being avoided. Like if I am calculating, as you said, that we can calculate
it is not necessarily depending on the simulation. It is also possible to, in a good simulation, I can introduce the error purposely. It is possible. Okay, so there are some good simulators which do that. Not all simulators will do that. That's the thing. But there are some simulators which do that. Okay, of course, the personal error can't be introduced purposely, but these random parameter errors can surely be introduced.
Okay,
so if you are building a software to simulate physics, take in, okay, how do I introduce error due to instrument? How do I introduce purposely error due to whatever you observe in the lab? Or slowly after some time, as your practical drags from morning 10 o'clock to say afternoon 1 o'clock, the temperature, room temperature increases, that may introduce some error. Okay, you can introduce that. That is possible.
Okay, so means theoretically we can make such like formulas with us so that we can introduce the error into the stimulation coding, and we can work accordingly, so that we can have a proper result further.
Yes, okay, you can do that. Not all sorts of errors we can do. Mistakes, of course, you can't do. And see, in the lab, there are things in the lab that you can't experience here, like burning smell of IC, you can't experience in online mode. Okay, but that is also part of training.
Yes, sir.
And your teachers will very well know that sitting in another room also, they will know something is burned in some lab.
Okay. Anybody else? Any more question? Okay. Ratna madam, you can take over.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Professor Mahesh Shetty, for such a wonderful session. It was really interesting, and I'm sure, I mean, this use of simulations and use of spreadsheets or this Excel in solving problems in physics, you have explained all these things in such a lucid manner. For example, when a student, and these are all examples you have taken which students are actually learning, like radioactivity, this simple harmonic oscillator, or the Helmholtz coil, etc. And you have explained that through use of simulations and these Excel sheets so nicely. I mean, I'm sure students must have understood it, and they must have found it very interesting. And I'm sure students will use all these things to, solve the problems in physics. Radioactivity, everyone knows, like, A disintegrates into B disintegrates into C, and you learn those graphs, but you can actually generate, by changing those values of lambda and etc. So I'm sure you all will use it in your solving these physics problems. I think sir has explained all these things in a very simple and very interesting ways. Even these Helmholtz coils, I'm sure FIBSc students learn about magnetostatics and how Helmholtz coil at particular distance they maintain a uniform magnetic field and so on. So these things also you can learn how it varies with the separation along the axis, etc. through simulation. So sir has explained it so nicely. I'm sure students will use it to solve further in solving physics. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. And thank you
very much for such a wonderful session.
Sir, I would like to say something, sir. I'm Neeta Srivastava from Physics Department.
Hello, ma'am. Yeah.
Yeah, hello.
I can see
can you
Rekha
hear me?
ma'am also. Yeah.
Yes,
Thank you.
Shetty sir. First of all, let me thank to you for giving such a wonderful lecture. But the best part which I liked about your lecture is that you have said one very important thing, that nothing is old. Like we had rightly you said that we started with Fortran, Pascal, WordStar and all. And I would like to say that Excel is still one of the strongest tool which I think many of our students know how to handle it. And the best part is that they can, the way you have explained simulation and all, they can play with it. They can learn physics out of it with a simple equation like radioactivity or spring motion with damping, without damping. They can introduce some parameter from their own side and see how the graph is changing and how the physics is infinite. We can learn so many things from there. We can plot the graph and see how things are changing. So it was so good. I can't tell you. I can't stop my, refrain myself from, speaking. So, and this pandemic time, students can learn so many things because Excel is something that it is there in, they can use it in their mobile. And like we have many softwares like, Origin, MATLAB, as you have mentioned. There are many. But Excel is something that it is in hand. Everyone must be using Excel. And they can learn physics out of it. So thank you very much, sir. I just wanted to tell you thanks and keep on giving such lectures. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. So I will, Kiran sir, I will pass on some of these Excel sheets and exercise to you so that you can give those exercises to students. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Anything? Otherwise, hello.
Hello.
Kiran sir.
No, it's fine. We can end.
May I request Professor Sandeep Hinge to propose a vote of thanks?
Yes, madam, I'm here.
Yes.
Good morning, everybody. Hello, Mahesh sir. Good morning.
Hello. Good morning.
Yeah. Sir, on behalf of Hindi Vidya Prachar Samiti, the Jhunjhunwala College, Department of Physics, I'm here officially to say the vote of thanks. Sir, I have attended this lecture after my MSc lecture. Okay, then in the lecture, I really like the way you represent the entire Excel. We use Origin lots of time, but the way you represent the use of Excel, it was really wonderful. It revealed the many more areas of the Excel. So once again, on behalf of the college, the Department of Physics, I really like to thankful the way you represent your lecture. Sir, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Sandeep sir.
Okay, we can end the meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Mahesh Shetty, once again.
Thank you, everyone. Ratna.
Yeah, we can end the meeting.
Yes, sir.
Perhaps he has left. Yes.
Okay.
You have become host, madam. You have become host. So you have to...
Am I? Oh, okay. So shall I end the session?
Yes, you can end this.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, all my dear students, all my dear colleagues. Thank you for joining. I'm sure you all must have enjoyed it. Thank you so much. Okay, let's end the session.